Well, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order, 7:05. Welcome, everyone, and happy Earth Day. Couldn't ask for a more beautiful day to celebrate the Earth. All right, so we're going to start our Sustainability Commission meeting today with the approval of the minutes from last meeting and the agenda for this meeting, which Rachel is sharing on the screen right now. And of course, you all received before the meeting. So do I have a motion to approve the minutes and agenda?
So moved.
Thank you, Carolyn. Do we have a second?
Second, Brian.
Thank you, Brian. The minutes and agenda are approved. Okay, just a quick overview of our agenda today. We'll start with public comments. We do have one public comment that I'll read here in a moment. And then we'll have a few staff reports, and then the bulk of our meeting will focus on following up on the tree preservation policy discussion that we had with a couple experts last week. And so just to give commissioners a little bit of a heads up, what I'd like to do for that discussion item is just a round robin to give everybody a chance to share a couple of items that really stuck with you from what our panel of experts had to say. So just to give you a few moments to think about that before we get to that part of the agenda. But let's go ahead and start with public comments. And I think that Amy is going to share the comment on the screen. We received a comment. Oh, so Rachel, I'll have to stop sharing.
No, I just shared it. Sorry, I forgot. Amy says she would. We're good.
It's okay. We can see it now, whoever is sharing it. We received a public comment from Kathleen Balaban. So I'll go ahead and read that. Good evening, commissioners. My name is Kathleen Balaban, and I live on 65th and Stevens. Richfield has ordinances that need amending and or enforcement, but to do that, we have to follow the current nuisances ordinance code 92501 that states in A, maintains or permits a condition which necessarily annoys, injures, or endangers the safety, health, morals, comfort, or repose of any considerable number of members of the public. If you haven't appreciated your neighbor's use of laundry products in the past, please imagine living near a new one that has 24 vents on its roof and is open 24/7, or one that has fewer vents but directs them at an apartment building next to the parking lot. The Partnership Academy Children's Playground is directly across the street from one of them. Laundromats are a necessity in every city, especially those that are growing up instead of out. What has changed is the products used in the laundromats, and not everyone thinks they are pleasant or healthy, especially when they get intermixed into the ambient air emitted. Toxicity is harder to prove and takes more time, so we are starting with nuisance and work toward verbiage for toxicity standards in the future. Unfortunately, the nuisance code requires a considerable number of complaints, comments, and you may have already seen our neighborhood flyer on Richfield's Facebook, next door neighbor, or in your mailbox. If you lived within a three-block radius of one. It was requesting respectful comments on whether or not public laundromats should filter their emissions. If you have not commented yet, please do so. You can contact Jennifer Anderson at 612-861-9881. We are now asking the Sustainability Commission to research and request an ordinance that is specific to protect our ambient air from toxic emissions from any small business, especially laundromats. There are ordinances for dry cleaners, auto body shops, and restaurants, and it is now time for Richfield to include toxic VOCs from laundry products. My neighbors and I appreciate all that this commission will accomplish and hope that you will consider protecting our shared ambient air for all residents. And if there are any questions, I can be reached at 612-869-8311. Respectfully, Kathleen Balaban, 6526 Stevens Avenue South. Okay, well, we want to thank you, Kathleen. I see she's not here live, but if you're watching this later, thank you, Kathleen, for the comment. And we just want to encourage all residents to submit comments on different sustainability topics when you feel you have an interest in that. Amy and Rachel, did you have any follow-up, or did you want to follow up afterwards with Kathleen?
Yeah, I know there's other city staff working on this issue already, so Rachel and I can tie in with them and kind of see where it's at on their plates and see how we may be able to help this along. And then we can follow up with both Kathleen and the Sustainability Commission at a later meeting.
Sounds great. All right. Apologies, I'm just pulling the agenda back up. I believe that was our only public comment.
Yes.
Rachel, Amy, were there any others? Great. Well, let's go ahead and move on to our staff reports today. We have a staff report. We have two staff reports from Rachel, one on organized collection and one on Earth Day. Rachel?
Actually, we have three, but
Okay.
one got added after I sent you guys the agenda.
Sorry,
So start with
no,
it's
version.
not your fault at all. Starting with organized collection, we are nearing the final stages, final weeks of the contract review with the haulers, and so that leads into our, bringing the draft contract back to the community. And so at this point, we are looking at several meetings in May, both with the community and the city council. And that includes, I believe, 2 work sessions and then a special public hearing. And so the order will kind of be work session, public hearing, follow-up work session. And I think I'll get those specific dates. The work session dates are obviously set already because those are the same dates as our city council meetings. The public hearing date has not been set yet, but will be soon, obviously, for advance notice and all that kind of stuff. So I'll be sending you all that information, and obviously we will be sharing it as far as and wide as we can with the community as well. So I believe the work sessions, just for your reference, are the 11th and the 25th of May. Those are obviously both Tuesdays. Like I said, they're before council meetings. So we will send the commission more information. I believe it's probably the work sessions might be something that the commission might be able to attend, but I will have to confirm if Amy knows, or we'll have to talk to Katie or someone else. But for sure, obviously the public hearing, it would be great to have representation from the commission, and we'll start getting that word out. Obviously, we want everyone's feedback, but really important to hear from people what they think of the contract as presented. If amendments need to be made, or the positive feedback, criticisms, things like that. Really just hoping to hear it all as we kind of wrap up this negotiation process. So unfortunately, contract is obviously not public information yet, but as soon as we send it to the council for the work session prep, I believe at that point it will become public information, and we can then share it with you all and the community in general. So Amy, anything I missed on organized collection?
I don't think so. I think just that we'll be sending out those dates with the agenda, and hopefully this group will be involved with that process next month.
Yeah, and so then, if everything goes according to plan, then the final revisions would be wrapped up around the end of May with that final work session. And if the contract is not approved in May, looking at the first council meeting in June. So obviously the timing is a little flexible, but that's what we're thinking.
Any questions from commissioners for Rachel? You mentioned I think May 11th and 25th, the work sessions. I'm sorry, I missed it if you said a date or an expected
Public
date
hearing
for the public hearing.
It's not set yet. It'll be the week in between the work sessions. So
Okay.
that is the week of the 17th. But since it is a special meeting, I don't know if there are requirements as to if it also needs to be held on a Tuesday. We haven't submitted that. It needs special notification also in the Sun Current, I believe, and we haven't started that process yet. So there's no specific date. It'll just be the week in between the work sessions.
Okay, well, that sounds like it will be before our next commission meeting. So folks,
Yep.
just be on the lookout for information.
Actually,
from
all
Rachel
3 of
about
those
that.
meetings will be before the next commission meeting. Yeah, so
Monitor your
we'll-
emails.
you'll be getting a lot of information.
Great. All right, and you had a staff report on Earth Day activities?
Yeah, so our Earth Day activities have been interesting. We had to postpone our staff and commissioner cleanup because of the events this week and just uncertainty around how the verdict was going to go and things like that. So our precaution, it was canceled and rescheduled for a date in May. So we will be sharing that information as well. It's towards the end of May. I think it's the 20th.
It's May 20th. Yep, May
Yeah.
20th from 11 to 2.
Yep. So all commissioners and staff and council will be getting follow-up information about that, but it's pretty much stayed the same, just a different date. But Earth Day obviously still continues, and we put out some social media posts today. Wood Lake is having the geocaching park cleanup event this weekend, both days actually, and I don't know if that's full or not, but anyway, you can always pick up trash and geocache. And so yeah, I think we're just trying to get the word out. Obviously, again, it's like last year in the pandemic, trying to keep things more individual and on residents and community members to figure out how they want to get involved in Earth Day. I took a walk at lunch today. It was pretty great. Always pick up trash when I'm out walking. So just trying to get out and involved and whatever that means to residents. I've gotten a lot of inquiries from people recently about sustainability and what to get involved in, and my number one thing is like, okay, well, what are you interested in? Because sustainability is so broad. So to some people, they really love water, and so I talk about cleaning storm drains, and some people it's all about food and gardening, and that's really easy. It's prime time to start seeds right now. So it's really just trying to figure out what everyone's interested in. And yeah, hope you all had a great Earth Day. I don't think I had any other things about Earth Day.
Any questions?
But the segue into the last staff report that isn't on the agenda is just a reminder about Hennepin County's, I think it's their zero waste. It's called Zero Waste Challenge. Yeah, and so I believe I mentioned this in the last commission meeting, but Hennepin County, like we've talked about the food waste challenge that they had a while ago, and the plastic free challenge as well. They're doing a zero waste challenge for the month of May. So it hasn't even started yet. And we did publish a post. We had scheduled a post a few weeks ago, but it published on the city's page, I think yesterday, sometime in the past few days. And so if that's something that you're interested in, it's a great way to kind of learn how to decrease your waste. Like I said, a lot of residents have been reaching out to me and figuring out how they can get involved. So we'll continue to publish that on the city's Facebook page, and I'll send you all that information as well, so you can share it with your networks. Like I said, it only runs the month of May, so it's more like a learn the habits and then involve or keep them in your life after. But the challenge itself is a 1-month activity. So I think that's all I have for staff.
Is that all like an individual challenge, or are there community events related to that challenge?
Mostly, so it's mostly an individual thing. I think they have it set up in a team style. So I'll have to do some research. Maybe there is an opportunity for us to create like a Richfield team that people can just, say, hey, I live in Richfield, I'm going to join this team. But it's not necessarily something that the city leads or has city events. It really is about individual behavior change. I think they're just, they want to track, certain. It's not a solely individual challenge. So, the idea is if you share these habits with friends and family, you're more likely to maintain them yourself, which is very true when it comes to behavior change. So I think that's the reason behind the team aspect, but it's not necessarily not a city run kind of thing. So.
Yeah, but I was just thinking if people wanted to form teams or stuff, sometimes that stuff's just kind of fun. It's
Yep,
gamified a
you
little bit.
definitely, I think you join a team, and if you don't want to join a team, I think there's like a catch-all kind of group, but they really do push the team thing if you and a bunch of neighbors or colleagues, if your workplace is doing it kind of thing. So there are multiple opportunities to get involved.
Cool. Any questions or comments from folks about any of the staff reports? All right. Hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to our discussion item today. So just as a brief recap, we had Dr. Eric North and Jennifer Teagarden join us last meeting to talk about Richfield's future tree preservation policy that staff are currently developing, and to share some ideas with us and answer questions related to tree preservation in general and different policies that they had seen from other urban communities. And it was really great panel discussion, and we just wanted to spend some time at this meeting kind of following up on the stuff that we heard. And kind of talking as a commission about what we thought was some of the most interesting ideas, so that we can share those back with staff and council. So this is just kind of an opportunity for you to share what you thought was some of the best ideas and some of the things that Rachel and Amy and others should be considering as this policy comes together. So I thought what we could do, just to make sure everybody gets a chance to share their thoughts, is do a little bit of a round robin and just go around and have folks share one or two or three ideas that you kind of pulled from the discussion. So I'll go first, so as not to put anybody else on the spot first, and then I'll ask for a volunteer to go next. So a couple of things that jumped out at me from the discussion. There were two or three ideas that I thought were really interesting, and one was I think it was Eric said that there should be separate policies for like a legacy tree policy versus or like a heritage tree policy versus like a tree preservation policy, and that they were really different ideas and should be treated differently, which I hadn't really thought of that before. I kind of thought this would all be lumped together, but I thought he made some interesting points about how like what constitutes a legacy tree might just be special cultural significance or history related to that individual tree, and it's treated almost a little bit more like a cultural landmark, whereas like a tree preservation policy is really more about sort of the broader urban forestry or the urban forest and canopy, and thinking of policies to maintain sort of like the benefits of that canopy as a whole. So I thought that was good advice. A couple other things were, I thought the idea when we were talking about what constitutes a fair replacement, because, he said, well, you can't replace a mature tree, you can only replant. And so the idea of having that replacement policy maybe being based on some other factor other than like a one-to-one, like if it's a 10-inch in diameter tree, maybe you have to replace it with like 10 1-inch diameter trees. And if that's not practical, in terms of space in the city, then I think maybe the policy could be designed in such a way that like, up to X number of trees, and then maybe, there's some sort of fee that you have to pay into like a fund that can go toward tree maintenance, because one of the things they both talked about was the importance of maintaining trees, and how that was a better investment of funds than just pure planting of trees, that maintenance was really worth the investment. So those are a couple of things that jumped out to me. Who would like to go next?
This is Jeremy. I'm sorry, I can just
We'll have
jump in.
Jeremy and then Carolyn. Yeah, go ahead, Jeremy.
Sorry, Carolyn. What I would really like to see come out of this whole conversation is on the city's website, within the sustainability region on the city's website, is some guidance and resources for residents to be able to go to continuously, especially, if they're planting a new tree, or let's say they want to plant a tree and put in a new tree, and give guidance on, the sort of appropriate trees for the region, and what sort of, characteristics are they looking for, but something to the point where, because I forget, the one moderator, she stated that, certain trees are not really suitable or desired to be a replacement tree. And I don't know that very well, and I'm sure a lot of residents don't understand that as well. So if we could have something that's visible and easily accessible for resources, not even just for, trees, but, other areas of sustainability that the commission could recommend and advocate for, but especially for this topic that we're talking about, I think would be useful.
Jeremy, that's a great idea and one that I have actually already started working on. The only problem is it's not a problem. We just need to do a better job of communicating this information. It's housed under forestry right now, which does have a link on the sustainability page, but it's probably buried and not at all clear that there's tree information. So I do like your idea of guidelines. We did recently create a prohibited species list, to kind of guide residents as to what they should be avoiding. And we also have created a recommended species list, because we did have a few different lists out there internally, and then for developers, and there wasn't really anything that was clearly on the website for residents who are interested in planting trees. So we have started it. I just need to do a better job of connecting it to the sustainability page, because it is on forestry right now. So
Okay. And what about maintenance then too? Is there resources on there for maintenance?
They aren't yet, but I have already started. I have thought about that and started working on them. It's more just trying to figure out how to format it so I don't overload the forestry pages.
Right,
And maybe that's where we create a page under sustainability for tree stuff, and then link to the forestry page and say the list of species is there. But here, we keep the guidelines under sustainability. That'll be an internal staff conversation with forestry, but just wanted to let you know we are started on that, and I do think it's a great idea.
Well, thank you, and thank you for being 2 steps ahead of us.
Hey, maybe this is the only time, but I'll take it.
Go ahead, Alyssa, and we'll get to Carolyn, but I think you have a follow-up comment.
Yeah, just in relations to that too. I mean, Jeremy, I think that's an amazing idea as well. But so would it also include, we talk about like the replacement piece of it too? Because I don't know, I wasn't here for the last meeting, but was it discussed as far as like private versus public, right? So if I'm a homeowner, what are my resources to like calculate maybe a replacement? So like, let's say I lose my giant maple, how am I, as an individual citizen gonna know, just for my own property too?
Yeah, it's really, it gets complicated. I think as we talk more about scope of this policy, we'll kind of understand why it does get a little complicated. So private property especially, private residential property especially is complicated. And your hypothetical, it really just depends on where the tree is that you lost. If it's on the boulevard, then the city gets involved. If it's truly, in your lot, then yes, it is up to you if you want to replace it. Currently, and we have talked internally about if a tree preservation policy could even legally apply to residential property, and I think there are just a lot of unknowns out there, when it comes to that question, but we can talk about the scope later, after you all give your stuff. So thanks, Alyssa.
Okay, Jeremy, did you have a second thought or anything else you wanted to share?
Oh, I'm sorry, I had to step out for a quick second. So I just missed what was said in the last few minutes. My apologies.
No worries. Alyssa was just following up on your comment related to like what kind of stuff would be in the guidelines. Rachel was talking about that. But I just wanted to know if you had a second key point from the panel that you wanted to share.
No, I think you've identified, my other points, and with that idea of, more like residents versus, commercial businesses, and having those two separate guidelines, because I think we have more control over, policies with commercial and compared to residential. I wouldn't feel comfortable telling residents, specific things, but again, if we can lay out those sort of guidelines and sort of protocol for them, I think making it easy for them to make the right decision. I don't think we have to put too much, specific efforts into residential, policies, more commercial based.
Great. Okay, Carolyn, we don't have your video anymore, but I think we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I was just really enthralled with the discussion. I think they brought so much more to the topic than I had ever thought of. And that it was a very rich discussion. For me also, Amanda, that was the first thing that really hit me was that we need to parcel out these two topics when we're talking about an ordinance. And the other thing that I loved, I think it was Jennifer's enthusiasm about the whole thing. And I think the discussion as a whole validated for me my energy about this topic. I think it's far more important than even I thought it was, and I'm more invested now in the concept of number one. For me, it's really important to maintain the bur oaks, and I'm sad to hear that they're kind of in demise a bit because of climate change, but that there is kind of a remedy for that in that researching around the country where there are bur oaks that are surviving in what our new climate environment is here. And so that gave me some hope. And I would like to see the city take an active step in actually researching that and having a plan for that, because I think it's to me personally, as a kind of a history buff, it's vital to me that we try to reclaim that heritage and not let it go. And that's something I feel strongly about. And so I was really happy to hear a solution for that, a possible solution.
Great. Thank you, Carolyn. Was there anything else that you wanted to share?
No, I think I covered most of it.
Yeah, good points. Any responses to what Carolyn said, or does anyone want to go next with some other thoughts?
I can go next if
Okay.
no one has a follow-up on Carolyn's.
Yeah, go ahead, Brian.
So I do want to echo what Amanda said about how not every tree is created equal within the value that it gives to the city and the environment as a whole, and then as well as how we regard groupings of trees and the value that they have. I thought that was really interesting. And being a science person, hearing new stuff like that is really, really cool. And then I like what Jeremy was saying, is having kind of these supportive measures to allow the citizens that want to do these things and enabling them with this pre-scaffolded way to do it, and not necessarily have to intentionally engage with a staff member directly. And that kind of feeds into my other comment. Some of the policies and ideas that were being brought up and that I've looked into afterwards just seem very heavy-handed to me. And like within the St. Louis, I'm glad that they exempt like the single and double family homes from some of it. And when we add more red tape for developers, fewer developers have the capability to compete. It adds cost. That cost gets transferred to the consumer, who are the most of the people that are living in these multifamily homes. And then when those costs increase, we indirectly decide who can and can't live in Richfield. And, you know, something as simple as this isn't going to increase costs a lot, but progressively, as more policies become created, it is a concern. So I just wanted to bring that up. You're muted.
You're not muted, but your sound wasn't working. I'm going to assume you were going to ask Alyssa if she has anything to say. Maybe. Unless you had a response, Amanda, in which case, uh-oh. It might also help if you reconnect or something. But yeah, go ahead, Alyssa.
Yeah, so unfortunately I wasn't at the last meeting, so I don't think I have
True.
a lot to add to the dialogue. But yes, I mean, again, I echo everything. Brian, that's a really excellent too. I wasn't even thinking about the impact that policy could continue to have on the community, you know, pricing out because adding in cost. I mean, that's a whole nother thing to think about too. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely echo everybody for what they said. So.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot that you said you weren't at the last meeting.
I know,
No, it's all good. Amanda, do you want to try now? I unmuted you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can.
Great.
Welcome back.
Thanks. Sorry about that. And all I was going to say before is, Brian, I appreciate that point. And I was just going to ask, so you think like maybe that looks like something like an equity clause, I guess, in the tree preservation policy that ensures that, you know, this isn't targeting, I guess, targeting residents specifically that, you know, or being designed in a way that is going to discourage the ability to have like adequate housing and you know, like affordable development and things like that.
Yeah, I have
kind of
no
what
idea
you're
what
getting
that
at?
would look like, but that was the idea.
I think just to kind of follow up on that, I definitely understand and agree with what Brian's saying. And I especially appreciated that you were calling out that it isn't necessarily like a tree policy on its own, but you know, the addition of, you know, whatever you know, new policies could come up. We have already started to talk a little bit internally about some of those things. And just I think I want to point out, you know, a lot of the redevelopment projects that we've been seeing, the costs associated with that development, you know, is multi you know, millions of dollars. So in just kind of thinking through very early stages, but thinking through what a possible tree policy could include in terms of how many trees might need to be planted, you know, and of course that could also depend on if trees are even needing to be removed in the first place, and then of course that potential idea of those monetary contributions, even, you know, if they are, you know, let's just throw a wild number out there, but like, you know, $1,000 a tree or something like that. You know, if we're juxtaposing it against like the multi-million dollar, you know, redevelopment project that's going in, it doesn't appear to be a huge expense, but I do appreciate Brian's point because I know that we do have to take into consideration, you know, everything adds to a project, and you know, this is really a collaboration and with the developers and the city and residents, and obviously we all enjoy trees and want trees, so we're all going towards the same place. It's just making sure that the policy isn't hindering anybody's efforts to get there. So we are already thinking about it. That's all that is to say. It is on our minds. Yeah.
I guess I would kind of like people to think about trees and green spaces, and that as something that's as important as our air. It's not a luxury. It's something integral to quality of life in Ridgefield and elsewhere. When you look at all the benefits that we get from trees and from plantings, I think it's really should be a community effort. And I think with these ordinances, I wouldn't want to see them as just like a rule or a law that people have to follow. I would like some problem solving, some solutions at the front end, so that programs where there is a partnership, where the city maybe contributes part of the cost of some of these things that be imposing or possibly imposing on developers and on homeowners. I mean, I think we need to look at it really as a community thing, as a common good, because we all benefit from it.
I
Good
agree. I
point.
think culture creation is a huge part of that, and it's a lot more sustainable than like what you said, just like imposing a rule.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of, like city cost share or something like that in association with tree maintenance and protection. I've kind of thought of that before in terms of, some of the tree species that we have that are under threat from insects and disease, like ash trees and bur oak blight, or oak wilt, that we have a lot of trees on private property. Sure, the boulevard trees and the park trees are protected by the city, but you're responsible for treatment of your own trees if it's in your yard, and a lot of people can't afford that. So, if there was some sort of like cost share available for residents to be able to protect their trees, it would go a long way to preserving this common good that Carolyn was talking about.
I think that might be something, if we do consider having a monetary fund associated with a preservation policy, that would be something that money could be used for potentially. I don't know. Again, we get into that sticky situation with private property. I feel fairly confident in saying that right now the forestry department has no budget to investigate residential cost share, which, I mean, it's unfortunate because we do see other cities, sometimes offering these things, but our department budget is just it's not there, and we don't have the staff time either. So I that's why I'm hopeful that with this preservation policy, if some of these other incentives are created, it would help the city help out with maintenance and or disease prevention and things like that on a larger scale that we are unable to do right now.
One other thought to follow up on Brian's comment about community culture and culture building around this. Another idea that Eric mentioned on the panel was this idea of like a checkoff box on the city water bill, where people could like check it off each month and donate $2 to a tree preservation or maintenance fund. And I really liked that idea because it was totally voluntary. And there's similar models like that in Minnesota for like the non-game wildlife fund that you can check off when you turn in your state taxes. Something like that where it's a voluntary measure that gives residents the opportunity to contribute in a small way. And I mean, obviously the money and the fund building is an important benefit of that, but I think there's also the benefit of that culture building that Brian talked about, to raise awareness and to give to give us something to talk about and sort of advertise like, hey, if you want to help, protect Richfield's trees and urban forests, like you can contribute to the checkoff fund on your wall. I mean, gives us something to talk about. So I really liked that idea. I thought that was something that city should consider.
Yeah, I mean, that honestly Amy and I think would have to run that through a few, several different city departments to see if that's an option. I don't know legally. I mean, you know, we do have the Roundup campaign at the liquor store. That's obviously a different format. So I don't know, you know, all the ins and outs of utility bills, and if we have that function through our Logis system even, you know, and then we'd have to run it through Public Works to see if they're interested in that, and utility billing, and then of course legal to make sure that we could even do that legally. But that is, if that's something the commission is interested in, we can start asking questions about that to even see if it's a possibility for sure.
Seeing a lot of head nods. Yeah, I think obviously that's not something we expected to be able to just lump into a you know, a tree preservation policy that would be passed by council.
Yeah,
but
that would kind of be
I thought it
separate
was a
from the
great
ridge
idea,
preservation policy.
and it, you know, it could be something to explore as a potential funding mechanism for some of
Sure.
the things that are talked about in this policy, in addition to maybe whatever sort of fund is created from a replacement policy. Rachel or Amy, did you have any thoughts or things that struck you from the conversation last week that were particularly interesting?
Yeah, I have a little list. You know, I think one thing that I heard from both speakers is just a kind of something for us to remember is taking our time with this. Like, don't feel like we got to get this done before summer or before fall. You know, it may take time, but I think as we're starting to ask more questions, even amongst staff, we're like, oh, we need to talk to this person or this person. And I really feel like it will be very collaborative between residents and across city departments. You know, just talking with Rachel the other day about this, we're excited to talk to community development, our city attorney, forestry. I think there's just going to be a lot of players in different areas. So I think it'll be very collaborative. Really like Jeremy's comments about increasing our resources and in education. I mean, we do have staff on board both at the Nature Center and in our forestry department. You know, potentially we may be able to offer some environmental classes for residents too about how to properly plant a tree, how climate change is affecting our urban forests. I think a lot of the information that could be online, we could also do, particularly after COVID, like some in-person educational opportunities, and just see how interested the community is with that. But I agree, we could increase our information online about tree care, tree replanting. One thing, you know, as we start to research, we're noticing some cities have kind of coined their tree policy significant trees, and kind of thinking of significant tree as an umbrella, and then having the different policies or guidelines kind of under it with heritage, the other one they talked about, but having just kind of this broad overarching title to it, like there's something significant about the tree. And as Amanda said, not all trees are equal. They benefit us in different ways, whether it's, you know, erosion control or shade or the historical value of like a bur oak. So just kind of looking at it from different contexts and perspectives. I love the idea of finding a fund, because as Rachel noticed or mentioned, we don't have a lot of funding for this, and from an equity standpoint, you know, we want to make sure, as Brian said, that we're implementing a policy that, you know, people will be able to go with. We don't want to have that financial barrier. So I think having some sort of fund that people could tap into to help with either taking down a diseased tree or planting trees is going to be really important. And I think there probably is some mechanism or some way we could figure out how to establish a tree fund. And then the last thing that kind of just stuck out that I hadn't heard before about trees was just that at about a 20-year age, you start getting a lot of the benefits trees have. So when you cut down a tree, it's really like 40 years that set back to start getting all the benefits of a mature tree. So I just thought that was an interesting point. You know, so if someone comes into a development and cuts trees, even though they may be replanted, it's going to take a long time to start seeing those values that we get from trees. So I just thought that was really interesting. But kind of like Carolyn said, I loved it. I loved hearing the different perspectives, and the information they brought I thought was great. So thanks for setting that up, Rachel and Amanda. It was good.
Yeah, thanks Amanda for the suggestions. I think, I don't know how much more I have to add on from what I took out of the conversation last time, just because I've already moved on to trying to start formulating what we're looking at in the policies. So I don't know at this point what is policy thoughts and what are last meeting's thoughts, but I did want to note in connection with the comments about increasing residential education, especially for, you know, people who just want to do this on their own, you know, just want to plant another tree in their yard or what have you. We have been having more internal conversations about having a Richfield tree sale, which I know is something that this group has brought up, and we are hoping to do something next year. Obviously, it is far too late to do something this year, considering that most cities are already done with theirs. But we are cautiously optimistic that we can pull it off for next year, at least at some scale, and kind of learn from there. But I know that that was something that this group has brought up, and I think that obviously ties into residents wanting to, you know, plant trees themselves, obviously, and helping out with the cost aspect of that as well. So stay tuned for more details. Obviously, that's a conversation we've just started having, so I don't really have anything else to share about it at this time, but wanted to mention that before I forgot. And then back to Amy's comment about taking time, I just want to be transparent with you all and say that obviously this is going to take a bit of time, and as you know, we do have you know, at least just one kind of small project going on right now with organized collection. And since I did mention that 3 out of the 4 weeks in May we have organized collection public meetings, I don't know how much work is going to be able to get done, especially having internal city staff conversations on tree policy stuff in May. So this might be a little slow in the beginning, you know, as we are in between projects. Hopefully, I mean, work will still be done on it in May. I just don't know how much of an update we will have for you at the May Commission meeting on the tree policy. So this is not, it's not a back burner thing. It's just, you know, it's on the side. It's a side burner, and we'll just keep stirring the pot and working on it as we can. So we'll bring sections of this policy back to the commission as they're done. I think that is probably a better way to go about it than trying to write this whole thing and then bring it to you all. So, and then obviously we'll need time to involve all city departments, especially with community development, because as Brian mentioned, this is, you know, very much a redevelopment heavy policy as it relates to the scope and what we've been talking about with residential versus commercial, you know, and maybe that if there are no other comments, I can kind of start talking about those thoughts. It's less about my thoughts from the last meeting and more about the policy in general. Is that okay, Amanda?
Did anybody else have any other thoughts they wanted to share? Go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, so I'll just share a little bit, and then we can with that. So basically, we still have to kind of have, we've started the legal conversations, but we still have to get our city attorney's opinion. As Brian mentioned, even looking at St. Louis parks, they do exempt single, I think they say like 1 and 2 households. So like basically single family homes and duplexes are exempt from asking the city if they could remove trees, but everyone else has to, you know, submit a permit or apply for a permit or whatever their process is, and the city has to approve tree removal. So what we're looking at right now for Richfield, and like I said, very subject to legal advice and things like that, is focusing on the tree preservation policy. And again, we also have to figure out, is it going to be a policy or an ordinance, which is a whole nother level of things, but focusing on this tree preservation document as it applies to public land. So obviously that's mostly parks, also boulevards, things like that, and private commercial projects, which in Richfield's case is redevelopment. So you'll find certain cities, and I know especially outside of Minnesota, that do include private residential of any kind in their tree preservation policy. I've noticed that in my research. That's just, as some commissioners have mentioned and staff have mentioned as well, there is hesitancy to even look at the legal ability to regulate private property, private residential property, and what happens on that, unless it pertains to diseased or hazardous trees that could harm residents. So we'll come back to you as we learn more about that. That's kind of what we've been talking about internally for now. And then for private residential property, really focusing on the educational aspects that Jeremy and a lot of you have mentioned, and going about residential tree replacement and planting that way. It just seems to be more effective and respectful of private property as well. So that's where we're at with the scope right now. Welcome any comments on that if anyone has any. Otherwise, I can kind of go over maybe one other thing while we have time.
Rachel, just real quick, this is Jeremy again. In regards to the resources for the residents, I would love to see like success stories and images and pictures maybe of recent plantings, tree plantings, whether that's even with residential or resident approval, to use the pictures and stuff like that to get ideas. And I think that would help further motivate, because I'm in that situation right now. And so I think it would be, a little more motivating. I'm trying to, think of ways to get our residents more motivated about, trees, because they are super important for, environmental factors, especially if we're working on sustainability. So something just to throw that out there, success stories, whether that's, on our city land or, residential or resident property as well.
I'll talk to forestry about that, because I'm sure Joe, our city forester, has some stories. We definitely have city stories. Amy, you help coordinate the Donaldson planting, right, with Tree Trust? Yeah, so we definitely have a fair amount of city stories, both from city foresters, helping the residents, or our community coming out to help plant trees at parks. So that's a great idea, Jeremy. We will work on that. And if you are curious for yourself, I'll send you the forestry link of species and stuff, if that'll help you. But no worries if that's not what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that would be fantastic. Thank you.
Cool. So then my last thing quickly is I just want to talk about kind of some of the things we already have in place, because I think, like I said before, a lot of what we have to do is further share our internal review process, especially as it relates to trees, because we do already review proposed commercial projects that go through redevelopment projects that go through an administrative review process. So I think that is just, an internal thing that most residents aren't aware of. And a lot of what that process entails would be incorporated in a preservation policy. So just quickly for your information, we have what's called the ARC committee, and ARC is Administrative Review Committee. So I guess it's not, maybe ARC committee is redundant, but that committee is comprised of a variety of staff members from different departments. I'm on it. Amy, are you on it? Yeah, for parks, I think. Yep. Chris Link is on it. Like literally almost every department in the city has a representative, and a project plans get submitted and go through that committee. And what has happened in the past is that Chris and Joe have reviewed those plans for public works things, but then also specifically for trees, as it relates to landscaping requirements and all that fun stuff. So as we go through the tree preservation policy, and create what that policy looks like, whether it's specific replacement ratio or the prohibited species list or whatever, all of these things that are created under the tree preservation policy umbrella will be implemented into the ARC review process for redevelopment. Obviously, public stuff doesn't really go through an ARC process, but just wanted to let you know that there is a mechanism in place, and those reviews currently happen. This whole process will just add detail to those reviews so that, you know, the developer will know, okay, you know, the site review has to happen from forestry. I know that I have to keep these trees. I might be able to remove these trees. If I remove these trees, I have to plant 5 more or contribute to a fund. Like, we'll be working on all of those details, but we already have the mechanism in play for the review of these plans. So that was the last thing I had for now. And I think maybe, unless there are final comments, we can wrap it up for the night.
Yeah, I
Oh,
was just
Jenna,
remembering what,
I guess.
yeah,
Sorry.
we'll get to Jenna, but I was just gonna say the Eric mentioned the ANSI standards, the
Yep.
ANSI standards.
Yep.
Uh,
And I do have those on my policy brainstorming list under the preservation category. So those will be worked in, you know, whether that's construction guidelines or replacement stuff. That's more research that I have to do.
Great. Well, let's go ahead and have our CSC update from Jenna.
Okay, hello everyone. Lots to get through, so I'll try to go quickly. Some COVID updates from the city. They're working on submitting pool mitigation and the farmers market mitigation plans for the summer. And then also talking about red, white, and blue days. And those plans will probably, some things will be modified, others will probably be canceled. So updates on those should be coming pretty soon. The inclusive playground at Augsburg Park was started this week, so that's pretty exciting. And the large playground that was there was removed, and it's being rebuilt in Montana, I believe, on a reservation. Is that correct, Amy? And so then that project will be done in mid-June, so the park will be reopening. For the Wood Lake building, they're meeting with architecture firms, and then we'll plan on presenting pre-design to City Council in May. But of course, that'll be a couple of years before that building is built. And then for the 2021 park projects that are going on, both parks, playgrounds at Fremont and Christian Park are being redone this summer. So there have been some meetings with the neighborhood residents for those 2 parks about what they want to see in their parks. And so we'll be combining the data that we received from those meetings and surveys, both in person and then also SurveyMonkey surveys to get information. So the recommendations will be going to the City Council in June, and those parks or those playgrounds will be redone in the fall, probably early fall. Let's see. There's a bunch of other park projects as well. Hammock stations are going up at Christian Park and Wood Lake. The Veterans Park parking lot is being redone this week. So it'll be reopening on Saturday, which is pretty exciting. Madison Park is having tennis court renovations. And then the action item that the commission had was the 2021 to 2026 capital improvement budget. So the big parks projects for the next 5 years. And the board moved to approve that budget to bring to City Council. So those are the main things that we talked about on Tuesday. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Jenna. Appreciate that. Any final comments for the good of the order? And head shaken. Great. Do I have a motion? Oh, sorry. Our next meeting is May 27th. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
I can second that. This is Jeremy.
All right. Thank you, Alyssa and Jeremy. The meeting is adjourned at 8:04.